how do you protect the part of you that like that child in you that makes you want to make stuff like this? And furthermore, how do you protect it to the point where you're still sincerely and unabashedly making marks that are fantastical and outside of the kind of societal, the average mean of like consumer product, I guess? I don't know.
I think that's a really good way to put it. I would just add on to that too. Like, I think a lot of artists and a lot of artists who make comics as young people, they're striving to draw as well as they possibly can. And I think in that process of trying to get like technically more efficient or proficient, you can, not necessarily, but you can lose that kind of like zeal for what you're doing and that kind of like impulsive mark making quality. And I think so all these artists that we pulled today, I think have this kind of like, have somehow managed to maintain, at least from our eyes, what that quality is. Maybe they would speak differently about it. I don't know. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. But like while reading these kinds of things, like these give me the same excited feeling about drawing and mark making and storytelling that I get from looking at those kids comics that are, and the kids comics are dashed off in half an hour a lot of times.
Right.
And a lot of these are kind of, I guess I would say like more accomplished artistic works, but they're embracing the same impulses, and then it's like refining the impulse rather than refining the craft in a way. Or the craft refines itself or something, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like once you put in enough hours, you kind of have a way that you're going to, or like a level to which you'll finish something, like how many marks or like how much polish or whatever. Regardless of your style, you're going to execute at a certain level. It makes me think, like, is another way into that learning all the rules and then throwing them all away? I mean, that's kind of like a cliche,
that's
but
the
like
Picasso approach.
Right.
The most common reference point for that is the Picasso
yes,
approach.
And that's why I brought it up, right? It's because it's that idea that, like, well, once you learn the craft and then you just kind of rip it all down and then you go earnestly again to what you found interesting when you were a kid, and then everything that you've learned informs that mark making. So you're approaching a path, and that path is buttressed by all the experience you have.
Right.
I just want an excuse to say buttress.
And I don't know. I would love to talk to all of these artists about, like, do they feel like they're still quote unquote improving? Are they still searching for something? Are they still chasing something? Because I think when a lot of people look at these kind of things, they have a quality of like, these artists kind of developed and then stopped at a certain point, and that became their style, and they just took it for, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying like it has a sense of like, craft wise, I'm good here, and I'm just gonna go from this point on.
Right. So
Ben Marrow's work specifically makes me think of that. It's this kind of like, put down the drawing and just like render the shit out of it. It's like it has this kind of like middle school, high school quality to it, and I know I'm saying that and it sounds like pejorative. And
it's not meant to be.
It has this like, this is where I'm at, but for the stories that he's telling, that style is completely perfect. Like you couldn't, if this story was like drawn in a way that was technically looked like a Vertigo comic or something, it wouldn't be as good.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that this conversation is a really good one to have. And it was similar. It was a similar question to what I asked when we were looking through Zoo by Anon. I was saying, like, are we affecting a style, or is this earnest mark making and you're saying like, I'm still learning and growing, but this is what I'm making now? Or is it just like, I've learned up to this point and this is the perfect vehicle for the story I want to tell?
Yeah, I don't know. And again, it's really hard to talk about this without sounding like we're saying like, these people draw like kids, but it's really not that. It's like, it's whatever it is it's perfect where it is. I was just looking for
right.
Oh, here. So like
that's what I'm calling sincere.
Yeah. So this kind of like, if you're like auditioning to work at Marvel, this panel is not going to fly, right? Like that foreshortening on the fist is like way traditionally like off, but the quality of what's going on here is perfect, and like the sensation of reading this and the like the vibe or whatever, like the synergy between how it's drawn and what it is perfect. But it's not quote unquote like technically recognizably what people would say is like good, what like a Marvel editor would say is like good.
It's certainly not Marvel house style, but we talked
about
that. We talked about that too, though. Like the comic style, right? Like comic book style that came out of those houses in the 70s, like the 60s and 70s. What became their house style was like it was like they were feeding the algorithm of the day.
Mm-hmm.
They would reinforce, they would value things that sold. Right. So whatever sold the best, that's where they would put their value. And that became like an amalgam, and then that dictated the style. In this case, I see someone who like loves the medium and is going all in and is doing their work in a kind of like outlaw style or like a power comics vibe. It's like this earnest markmaking and this need to tell this story.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, all those aspects come together and like coalesce to make the perfect thing.
Yeah.
They make an object, a book, a piece, an art piece that has all these disparate elements that mix together in this perfect kind of in this perfect way.
Yeah, and I also think like this is, again, I'm not saying this is a perfect comic because it's like content that I think is wonderful or whatever, but like it's a horror comic ultimately. It's a slasher horror kind of thing, and like if this was really polished, it wouldn't be as uncomfortable. I think it's like if you watch
it's compelling, yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you watch a contemporary horror movie, if it's really slick and the cinematography is like really nice, and it's meant to be like a grimy, dirty movie, it doesn't work. There's like a disconnect there.
Like Dune. I just watched that.
That's not a horror movie.
I just watched that today. It's horrifying. Dune 2.
Is it horror like it's bad?
No. I mean, it's like it's graphic. I just watched it today. That's why like I finished it today. No, there's like parts of it that are absolutely terrifying. Like
I read the books.
Shout out
to Dustin Harbin who got me to read the Dune books.
Oh yeah. I read those Dune books. They're fantastic.
They're amazing. Yeah, I haven't seen the movies, but I'm not anti.
I lost the thread though in the third book. I kind of like read halfway through and was like,
The third. Oh right, because the
third
first
one.
the two movies are the first book. The third book is like the best one. Children of Dune. That
Children
one rules.
of Dune. Yeah. I got about halfway through it and I was just like,
oh dude, go back
I
to
will.
it someday.
I'm gonna reread the whole thing.
Yeah.
But before, when I was saying all these elements come together perfectly, I wanted to say cosmic gumbo.
Write that, put it on your list. That's a good phrase. Oh, but anyway, there's a lot of like sexual violence and stuff in these comics that I can't say I like advocate for. But if you're making something that's like grimy and dirty and disgusting and has this kind of like uncomfortable feeling, the fact that it's that some of these things are like off really add to it. And I don't want to say off because it implies there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. Like I love Ben Marra's comics. I want to be very clear about that. I love the way he draws, and I find that in a totally unironic way, I think he's an amazing artist.
Yeah, Ben's great.
And but I just think it's like it's a thing that some people would look at and be like, "What the fuck is this? This looks like it was made by some like middle schooler."
It's interesting to think about how people assign value. You know, oftentimes we're looking at comics that other people might consider art comics, and I just see comics. But we have this need to like quantify and typify and like separate things and categorize. So, it was like I was talking with Josh today about how when you say autobio to someone, you're like, "Oh, I'm doing an autobio comic." They're like, You're not famous. Why would I? What have you done?
Shit? Yeah.
What are you talking about? Autobio. You're not a World War II general. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh no, I can just write about my experiences and that has value. Like my roommate said that exact thing to me at one point. I go, I think I'm gonna do an autobio. He goes, shouldn't you have to have like done something first? And I was like, wow. I was like, too close to the bone, man. Anyway, but so it's like, how do we assign value? Like, does the tone and voice and storytelling ability and just my lived experience, is that enough value for an autobio comic, or should I be like Drake before I can write an autobio?
I would never. You couldn't pay me enough to read Drake's autobio comic.
No,
fuck
definitely. That guy sucks. That's why I brought him up.
But that's what we said in the autobio episode. Where like, what does it take to make a good autobio comic? You just have to be cool and interesting and funny.
Cool, funny, and interesting. That's right.
So yeah, Panter, I guess, is maybe the biggest name in this realm.
In this pile?
Maybe. In the pile, but maybe in just the realm of like, I don't know if he would even fall into this category. This is so hard to articulate. That's why I wanted to talk about it.
I think Panter...
It's really hard to describe in terms of like, it's not a movement, it's not a technique, it's just like there are some things that have that quality and some don't.
Yeah, it's astonishing to me actually. Because before I knew better, I would just kind of pass over work for stuff that I thought was more accomplished.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like I didn't know any better.
That's what, and a lot. Actually, that's a good point too. Like this is a lot of this stuff too is like a wreck your cred sort of thing for me, where like I didn't really like get this kind of thing until within the last maybe 8 years or so. Like these are not things that like have spoken to me forever. But it's a thing I used to look at as being very crude, and now speaks to me on like and it might actually, teaching may have been a big part of that. Actually, I don't think I made that connection until just now. But
What do you mean,
like,
teaching?
So I think like the more I've been exposed to that kind of like beautiful, spontaneous mark making of children actually drawing, I'm not sure I could see what it is that's appealing to this kind of thing as well.
Right.
Maybe like Chippendale is maybe like the exception, who's like someone I've been into a little bit longer, but something like Gary Panter, like before maybe 10 years ago, I would have been like, I don't get it.
And that's fully like what I'm trying to say. It's like the earnest like energy, the fervor with which kids make marks, and the way that their storytelling is so direct and impactful. That's the energy that our protagonists here have come back to.
Yeah.
Whether they went straight to it or whether they lived a whole life and circled back on it, they then evolved to this. And so for me, it's the same way. I would have looked at this work and never looked twice. But then what happens is you make comics, you read comics, and your taste evolves.
Right. And your interest, like what you're trying to do, changes too.
Exactly. And so then as that changes and evolves, your final form comes to appreciate this more, because you're like, wait a second, I see what they're doing here.
Yeah, you get the impulse behind it.
Yeah, and like you understand that what you would normally pass over or maybe not consider as deeply are choices that are being made.
I didn't think of this for our hatching episode either. There's actually a lot of cross hatching in this book.
Especially in his early stuff, right?
There's so many styles going on.
Yeah, he does so many different styles. And that's the other thing too. It's like experimentation, right? It's like this combination of, especially with Panter, like copy machine stuff and tone and every different kind of style.
Yeah, he's such a genius.
Tons of different mark making. Like
they said, what an incredible artist on this.
As we flip to that spread eagle. Yeah, and I just think once you make stuff, right, then like your attention changes. Like what you pay attention to changes.
Yeah, and I think probably before 10 years ago, I was still chasing this kind of like technical precision, and I think I was still trying to draw, not realistically, but like a Vertigo comic or
like
something.
A slick,
I keep going back to that. Yeah, it's like I want to draw like something that looks like real people in unreal areas. Like, and I think that's not what I'm interested in anymore. And like the mark making aspect of it is a huge part of it. That drawing is more than just representing something accurately. Like the act of making the mark is part of the experience, and that opened up drawing again for me in a new way. And a lot of these artists here have a big thing to do with that.
And it's capacity for abstract thought, right? Like we're brought up idolizing work that we think is amazing, yet it's amazing for certain reasons, and that has mass appeal or it's commercially viable. And then we grow and our capacity for abstract thought increases, and we can hold ideas in mind where we're like,
this is fucking amazing,
this is sick, like
we're like astonishing drawing.
We're like, this is, this is a painting, like this is,
oh yeah, I want this like
is the side
40 feet
exactly
tall.
This is like one whole side of the building of the Met.
Actually,
like,
you just said something about abstraction. I just read this thing last night.
Yeah, grab it. I'm gonna flip through this book some more.
So I have
look at these colors.
I have a couple issues of this drawing magazine called Fucked. Do you know anything about this? Or maybe Fucked.
I don't think so. I don't know that.
I think it's published out of like Sweden or something.
Okay. I like this cover.
So each one is like wildly ambitious in terms of how they put the book together.
Cool.
I only have a couple of them.
The grommet in the middle.
Yeah. We should do a different episode on Fucked. Fucked is amazing. But you just said something that really piqued my mind. I literally just read this last night. It's a Julie Maretu quote about abstraction. Here's something in here somewhere.
Subversive act.
Yeah. So abstraction is a subversive act. So she says, "Is the spirit?" The question is the spirit of the current political moment reflected in these monotypes? She's talking about switching similarly from these enormous. I don't know if you're familiar with her work, but she does these enormous architectural drawings with all this mark making and stuff, and she started doing these kind of smaller monotypes.
Oh, okay.
And she says, everything about the social and political reality I live in informs my thinking and making. Simply in making marks that mere gesture, there's an insistence in the face of any type of oppression in the most repressive situations in the world, the insistence of people to be, to live and stay themselves and continue not just to survive, but to invent and create is incredible and liberating. There's power in that in itself. And the interviewer says that creation in and of itself is a political act. And she says it's about discovering what's possible through insisting on something, being powerfully inventive with or without recognition of power. It's not in reaction to power, it's that one is powerful nonetheless. And I think like that idea of abstraction is resistant to that common acceptance that things are supposed to look a certain way.
Except that the abstract movement, the abstract expressionist movement in the United States was almost fully funded by the CIA.
Yes, that is a commercialized version of this impulse. But the impulse to abstract something for your own exploration, I think, is resistant to a norm.
I would agree.
Pushing against it. It's countercultural.
I would also say it expands one's mind in their ability to think in a way that is unfamiliar to them. I would also say that the act is pure. We know that any amount of money can turn anything banal.
Totally.
If you foist money onto something, it like, for instance, transmutes hip-hop into Drake, which is like Target, easy listening,
Sprite
commercial music that's bullshit, right?
Totally.
Just to use a reference that we were using earlier.
Let's keep talking shit about Drake. It's fun
because
with me.
fuck Drake.
Fuck Drake. Do you know, are you Carlos Gonzalez fan?
I don't... I gotta say, this is the first time I'm seeing Carlos Gonzalez.
So he I think is an example. Flip through that book.
When I first picked it up, I thought it was CF for like a hot second.
Okay, so he's buddies with CF. He's also in Rhode Island. First glance, yeah, totally. But I think he definitely has his own thing going.
Sure.
The knock against Gonzalez, I think if anybody had one, is that all of his comics look exactly the same. But he is like a wonderful writer. It's like really funny. It's full of interesting ideas, and I think he fits into this mold of like. He hit a spot and he's just going from there.
Yeah,
like whenever he hit this style, like if you look at his earlier zines, they're like there's changes. Obviously, the more of his stuff you read, it does kind of shift a little bit. But he just kind of hit a thing and he went with it, and it's extremely simple. His characters are almost always facing forward or to the side, which is also that's why I picked this out actually because that's how kids draw. They draw all characters are from the front or the side.
Yep.
And he's got this language, and it just for me it just works. Like I think he's amazing. So this story is his most recent thing that he's serializing now. I think it's almost done. I think there's only one more coming out. There's 5 out so far, and the 6th one's coming out. Totally self-published. You just buy them from his website, and he ships them to you. So the premise for this is there's like, imagine that there's like a VR world you can access through Nintendo Switch or something like that. Yeah. And then all of the equipment goes out of what am I trying to say? Extinct.
Are you sure?
What happens when technology goes extinct?
It's like not created anymore? It's
so like
outmoded?
Outmoded, I guess, yeah. So imagine that like all of the ways to access this VR world go away. Like if people get rid of their Nintendo Switches, like time has passed, they're on to the next thing, whatever. But the VR world still exists.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so people start to realize that there's still stuff going on in there, and there's actually still people in there.
That's amazing.
And so the game is called Everglide, and that's what the comic is called. And so people start to go in there, and then like they find like a headset that allows you to access it, and they go in there and they find someone else that they used to play with, and it gets weirder from there. Like there are no bounds to this, but the whole thing about this is it strikes me as like taking a very simple kind of kid style, but applying these like really lofty kind of philosophical writing to it. And I think like some of these I laugh out loud reading this comic sometimes, and I think about them like all week after I get them and I read them.
That's so cool. Yeah, it seems like when you the way you describe the plot or like the premise, it's really interesting to me actually.
And it even kind of feels like a kid. Like it like the printing is like not amazing. Like this is so raw and so badass to me because it's just like this is my thing in its most pure essence. Like this is the thing that if I came across this at a table, I would be like, this is my new favorite dude ever. And I would hang out at this. I would buy everything that.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting too because that just made me think of how what we look like the way we tried to improve or the things we looked upon were heavily commercially considered, and this is just earnest. It's like I need to tell this story, and it doesn't matter. In fact, it will the parts that come out will suit the telling of the story. Like,
yeah, totally.
You can't. I feel like the only way you can never do anything that doesn't come out perfect, essentially, unless you get in your own way.
It depends on your own definition of that.
Well,
I guess.
If you get in your own way, then it'll come out all disjointed. If you're trying to make something that you think will sell, or you're trying to make a comic that looks like a comic, which I'm guilty of. That's what like so much of my learning has been unlearning.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I unlearn what I had read in all the big two and all the books as a kid? Yeah. How do I unlearn all that so I can tell the most honest story? And then the art that emanates out of you when you've discarded all that, like, trying to be something, it's the perfect art for the story. It, like, you get out of your own way, the art rises to meet the story. And that's what we're seeing here. It's like this synergy, rather.
Yeah, totally. And that's also the thing that I'm always chasing with, like that's part of why I think like self-published stuff is so amazing, is because it's stuff that publishers would pass on because it's not marketable in the traditional terms of what is marketable. They're like, what's trendy, what's hip, what's cool. And I think even something like Fantagraphics is guilty of like picking up on certain trends in the world of self-publishing and then capitalizing on them. And like, you know, no shade to them, I guess.
They gotta pay their bills.
They do whatever, and like I'm sure they put plenty of people in good places, but like there's just something amazing about self-publishing where it's like you're able to it's not just a publishing and monetization approach, it's also a creative approach. When you know you're making something that you are going to hand to another human being, there's no barrier between your brain and what you put on the page. It's purely what you want it to be.
Right.
And you don't have to give a shit about what an editor is going to say or whatever, or what Scott McCloud has to say.
Totally.
Like, who gives a fuck?
And hopefully that helps you get out of your own way.
Right.
Like if you ultimately believe that you're making this for you and like 5 of your friends, then how could you not excel to the highest, you know, to your highest potential in your storytelling, in your weirdness, in the like the absence of fear, like the bravery of what you put down on the page. Like spill your guts or whatever, right? Bleed on the page, like they say. It's like, dude, get weird. Like get as weird as you can.
Or just fuck around.
That's what I mean. Yeah, like totally, it's an exercise in your own creativity. Like there's no wrong answer. So give yourself permission to be yourself and put all that on the page. And you know, when we were talking about Crumb last week, that's what I kept thinking about. I kept thinking about, well, maybe he's just like dumping the contents of his brain out on the page.
Yeah.
I also think, you know, that work is problematic for many obvious reasons.
As we said.
But I'm saying, like, as I thought about it more, I was like, where's this coming from? Because that was my ultimate takeaway was, I don't know where he's coming from. Like, what is his stance? And that's where we likened him to Johnny Ryan. We're saying, like, where is Johnny Ryan coming from? Like, he's on Captain Insano planet. Like, what does he stand for? And it's like, in his comics, maybe he doesn't. You know, but like that's not up to us. It's up to him to tell us, right? And I'm sure there's a ton of stuff out there, interviews with him. Yeah. In fact, Johnny, if you want to come on the show and talk about comics,
please, I would love to talk to Johnny Ryan. That'd be great.
We'd have a ball. It would be bonkers.
We'll have 2 balls.
We'll have 6 balls.
There'll be a lot of balls.
A lot of balls. And whatever balls are on the page, which are like hundreds at this point.
Okay, what was that? I just had another thing I would say. And I can't remember what it was.
Your brain is a machine that produces thoughts. You are not your thoughts. So, like, that's what your brain does. It produces thought. And every one of those thoughts is a bid for your attention. Do you give it your attention? It's like, it's calling you. It's saying, hey, look over here. And it's like, do you act on that thought, right? If your brain constantly makes thoughts, then how could you blame yourself for the thoughts it produces? Like, it's not fair to you.
Yeah, and if you were able to somehow curate those thoughts as they were happening, it wouldn't be a thought. It would be something. It would be whatever the next level.
Fair, yeah, that's like, a good point.
If you're able to process them and filter them as they were happening, it wouldn't be a real. That's not what thinking is.
Yeah, totally.
Dan, do we just get to the root of what thinking is?
I mean, we're doing good work here. We're really in the trenches.
Paper Rad.
Yeah, Paper Rad definitely has kid vibes to me. It's serving a kid type beat.
Also super hilarious, sometimes gross in a kind of like unfiltered, like farty, poopy, boner way. But really impulsive, spontaneous, like make the book, get it out, give it to all your friends, like we were saying before. I hate
spontaneous combustion.
I know I'm not the first person to say this, but I hate that this exists in this like hardcover $60 book that everyone has to buy on eBay now. Like these things should be out there. Someone published these comics. Like these should all be read. These all should be able to be read, I think.
Sounds like a job for Toy Box Coffin Place.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
It'd be a huge undertaking. I think.
No, make it happen.
Didn't we talk to Gabe about it and he was just like, there's too many people?
That was Paper Rodeo.
Oh, Paper Rodeo.
So yeah.
Sorry, my bad.
He was a common thing. So there's Paper Rodeo,
and there's Paper Radio,
Rad, and there's Paper Radio, which are 3
forgive me
separate but overlapping things, I think.
Please forgive me.
We could do a whole episode on that. But I love that it's just like, it's kind of like whatever paper they had on hand, you know, fill up the pages, get them out there, and like some of it is comic, some of it isn't. Which is really it's the thing I'm trying to do with the book I'm working on right now, which is like whatever the page is, that's what the page is, and like the book doesn't have to have this big thesis statement. It doesn't have to have like a goal. It's just
doesn't even have to be cohesive.
This is a collection of thoughts and impulses and mark making basically. Here's CF here, Paper Radio.
You know who's serving up a type beat like that right now that I would say is like a modern contemporary analog, or at least is like adjacent, who's doing a similar thing, is George Olson with Clamp.
Yes, totally. Completely. Especially those like tear out sheets, those
I
one
love those
sheets
books.
are
Let
awesome.
me show you something.
Collage, photos, there's a lot of like grid paper and stuff and these kinds of things. And like a lot of like lettering. I'm really interested in the kind of like paper rodeo, paper red sort of typography explorations that they're doing. I think are really cool. Not giving a fuck about like what it
This
is.
is sick.
You can't like
I love
this
that.
is amazing. Like this is
Candyland on the tie-dye.
just like an aesthetic that
looks
appeals
like
to me so much.
Yeah, it looks like a placemat that you get at like a hippie restaurant or something.
Yeah, and just I mean these covers are so fucking awesome. Like everyone talks about how covers are so hard. Like just draw something. Who gives a shit?
Draw it 100 times.
Draw it 100 times. Draw 10 covers and pick the best one. Like
I like
love.
covers.
Oh, I like covers too. But I was just talking to oh god, I'm blanking on everybody's name today. I was just talking to somebody. Crooked Teeth.
Jorny Jimp Chomp.
Crooked Teeth. Who's
Oh,
Crooked
Nate
Teeth?
Doyle?
Nate Doyle.
Yeah.
I was just talking to him on Instagram the other day about making covers. And he was like, yeah, I don't know, I was having like thinking about the cover and like we're on typography and stuff. And I was open about it. I was like, I hate making covers so much that I just like I make them all in pen and I just sit and draw it and whatever it is that's the cover because there's no way for me not to overthink it.
Oh, I love making covers.
And well, you have kind of like a format, I think, for Island, which is that helpful? Maybe
I do for Island. I think it is helpful for Island
like,
because it
that's
takes the
amazing.
pressure off of any art can go in that little frame, and it's like I'm framing this art. It's
Yeah.
like very easy in that way. But I mean, I like covers in general. I like covers in other. I like different covers.
Making covers. You mean.
Yeah, making covers. I made a new cover for my new book, which I haven't fully finished yet. It's gonna be dope.
Wait, what cover am I doing?
Get cracking. You want to do 16 or 17?
I don't care.
All right. Well,
Whatever you want me to
I
do.
need a cover for 16. I got
Just
a
give
couple
me,
people
you
in
just
the
gotta
wings.
give me a deadline.
Okay, I will.
These are Mad Libs in these.
But this is
Just
that's
put,
great.
Put it all in there. Like this is a book I open when I'm like, is my book too loose? Like whenever I'm working on something,
Is
I'm
it
like,
too loose?
does this need to have more of a story or something? And then I look
And
at
then you
something
look at
like
this and
I'm
you're
like,
like, nope,
fuck
I'm
no.
good.
You can do whatever you want. Look at this. And
That's
this drawing's amazing.
You know what? I hope that's the takeaway from this is do whatever you want.
Yeah. Do
Literally,
whatever you want.
do whatever you want. Give yourself permission to do any kind of comic.
It's like primary.
There's
colors.
no rules.
Yeah.
You can put literally anything on the page. And I think that's what we're seeing more than ever now. And that's kind of why I'm so hyped on the movement that's happening at the moment.
Same.
That's the point of this channel is to like show where we've been and where it is now. And this is largely, like we were saying, a wreck your cred moment. Like these are your books. This is largely a darkened area in my comics appreciation. But Joe V was our friend from Michigan. He was the first one to show me this book.
That's like my favorite book that
And
I own.
he must have shown me this book 15 years ago or something. Something like that. An insane amount of time ago. And I was like, I don't get it. 15 years ago, I was like, what is this?
I think I remember seeing this when it came out. I think Midtown Comics had one copy of it. And I looked at it and I was like, first of all, why is this book so huge? Second of all, what the fuck is this?
I didn't know what it was, what I was looking at.
Yeah.
And I think what a testament to the book itself that now I can look at it and love every page turn.
Oh my God. I've
when
looked
I
at this so many
when I
times.
first saw it, I was like, what am I looking at here? Because I didn't think I could just publish my sketchbooks, or I didn't think, like I was so up my own ass about what's a comic. I wasn't making any comics. What did I know what a comic was, you know?
Again,
I
it's
wasn't
those
making
standards,
anything.
Those standards that lurk in your mind that
Yeah.
are that are created by other people, mostly
Exactly.
for commercial purposes,
Exactly.
to prevent you from doing what you want to do, to create a marketable product that someone else can make money off of.
Absolutely. It's about exploitation and domination. And
Wait, so sorry, finish that thought.
well, okay, so the only thing that I was gonna say was that we're gonna read that Tommy Matsuri essay about style, and I think it talks a lot about that, what we were just saying about commercial consideration and the way that our appetites are conditioned, and we're conditioned to accept a certain type of product. Okay, yeah, go.
Sorry, I was just going to talk
you're
for
good.
anyone who doesn't know what this book is. So it's a perfect link between this sort of childlike impulse and whoever can carry that quality into adulthood and professionalism or whatever. So Ninja is the name of this book, and so I guess Brian Chippendale drew a bunch of Ninja comics as a kid at this size. And this is a drawing he did as a kid, this page right here. And so what he's doing in this book is he's creating a continuity between all of these drawings he did as a kid, and continuing the story
I love it.
of the ninja in the book. And it's not like, oh, I'm drawing the same characters. It's like these ones fit into the story.
Right.
It's a continuation of something he did as a child, which is like, I wish is an idea I wish I thought of first.
Yeah, totally.
But it's because it's amazing. But also he does
starts
all these,
there too.
He does all these interesting things about like how to fill the time gap too. It's like time has passed and things. It's just like this book is fucking bonkers.
This is so
it's like
cool.
I can't believe it exists.
I love this.
And every page of it is just like completely overflowing with amazing drawing
and
inspiration.
when Joe showed me this 15 years ago, I didn't get it. And now looking at it, I love it. Like I honestly love it. Like it's so fantastic. But again, you were saying about teaching, it's like if I didn't teach kids for the past 10 years, I don't think I would appreciate this as much as I do. And I wouldn't appreciate it for the same reasons.
Right. Yeah, I wonder if I saw this in high school or something, if I would have even known that this was drawn as a kid and this wasn't. You know, I think I wouldn't have even been able to tell that this was like a more accomplished version of this, just because of how your eyes work and your brain.
Yeah.
Well, like just the things that your brain has seen and the way you can differentiate between things.
And conversely, it's like when you ask a kid to think in 3D, they're like, "What?"
Yeah, like,
they
well, I
don't.
don't know
They
what
don't.
they're
They don't know what you're. Like the brain hasn't formed in that way. And I'm saying when I was younger, my brain hadn't formed in a way that could appreciate work like this, and now I'm glad that it has. Or at least I think that it has.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always...
My brain's turning
always
into
improving.
oatmeal right now.
It's always improving.
I need to go back to school. So so this is all this book is this?
So it's
how
this,
long
but
does
it's
this
also
go?
it goes. It's long as shit. Like you can read this book over the course of like a week. It is dense as hell. And then there's sections are broken up by more sketchbook pages.
Good lord. So how long, Brian? How long did this take you to make?
Please, Brian, come on the show. I met Brian once after a Lenny Bull show and talked to him for like 2 seconds. He's a super nice dude. Huge creative inspiration for me.
All right, well, maybe we'll tag him.
At Chimpendale.
No, I mean the book is humongous. So not only is it big, it's like a tombstone.
Yeah, and this stuff is all hand drawn. Like,
right.
It would be so easy to copy and paste that stuff in. Like, all this crazy ass patterning is all drawn by hand. There's one where it looks like it's starting to like glitch a little bit, and that might have been like this page. Like, I feel like he didn't cut it up. He just drew it that way.
Oh, sick.
But I'm not sure. But like,
because you like.
It's almost like harder to do it this way.
Yeah, right. Equally obsessive to like put it through a paper shredder and like or chop it up on the computer. It's equally as difficult. I don't know. I think he did draw it straight out on the ink.
And I like this idea too of like noise. Like I mean, if that's what lightning bolt sounds like too. You know, so it's like noise until you go deeper into it and you realize that's all these amazing pages of characters.
Oh my god,
and then he does other ones of these later too.
This is amazing. Look at all these characters.
So many. They have great names too. It's all those like
Javelin.
Yeah.
Veggie Killers.
Master of the Dead.
Winged Warrior.
Knife. Or
Thorn.
King Underworld. Thundercracker.
Power Surge. Bubbler.
Bubbler. Shout out to Brian Bubbler.
Power Man.
Power Man 5000.
Oh yeah. Muscle Man. Bounce Back.
Yeah. So I think if anyone
Giant.
embodies this spirit to me, it's
this is so cool.
Chippendale. And it's this particular book too, which is like I've never seen anything make a clearer case for like how to maintain it. Master Super Guy.
I mean, there's a reason why this is blown up, half a page. But yeah, Master Super Guy. I'm here for it. Amazing. Well, like I was saying, what a great name for a character would be Man.
Man.
And
Which is also a band.
There's a band named Man. Yeah.
They have a band. Their name is Man, and their lead singer is Honus.
So cool. This makes me want to draw.
Yeah, big time. I gotta get some markers, man. It's been a while since I fucked around with some markers.
Yeah, I really like the Prismacolor markers. I know the internet loves Copics, but I find Copics to leak. And I hate when something leaks all over my work. It drives me nuts.
You gotta teach me how to use markers without the ink bleeding all over the place.
Yeah, I did. I just did that today, and I was like, "Ooh, Mike would love this."
Yes, that's what I want. I need to know the combination.
It's you have solvent-based markers, or
just give me the brand name. I don't care.
Right. So real quick, just for the audience, for the listeners at home, there's markers that are solvent-based. Those are the stinky ones. When you take off the cap, they smell like a Sharpie.
That's the Prismacolor?
Prismacolors or Copics. Those are all solvent-based, meaning they suspend the pigment in solvent.
Okay.
Alcohol, yeah, usually. And so then you have solvent-based markers, and then you have water-based markers.
Right. Like a Crayola.
Like a Crayola. Right. Perfect. Yeah, perfect example of Crayola. Also, there's water-based pens, like any of the Tombows or Microns.
Microns are water-based?
Are water-based.
Okay.
But they're going to be waterproof as well. Some of them.
But those smudge with some markers.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So Microns will smudge if you use a water base. You can go solvent on top of water.
Okay.
It's oil and water, baby.
Right.
Solvent on top of water, or water on top of solvent.
Okay.
But you can't go solvent on top of solvent.
Right.
So if you have ink with a shellac, like a dip pen, like you're using Dr. P.H. Martin's Black Star matte ink, that has shellac in it, so it has solvent in it, so it's waterproof.
Oh, okay.
So you put that on, and then you put the solvent marker over top, and it melts the solvent and smudges the
Oh,
ink.
interesting. Okay.
But
All right, that makes sense.
like, I just did a drawing. I happen to have my sketchbook here. I just did a drawing today, and I used the water-based. I used a water-based brush pen, and I just went right over it with the Prismacolor. Now you can see it bled a little, but that's only because it was still wet.
Okay.
I didn't let it dry. I did it instantly. But even instantly, I get no bleed.
Yeah, that's cool.
Over
Is
this-
it the Pentel brush pen? Which one?
This is a Pentel brush pen. So it's water-based ink, and then I went right over with the solvent.
Okay. Because I like using watercolors and stuff, but I think I'm ready to explore some markers.
Yeah.
I mean, paper red is like a lot of markers.
Markers are super fun, and it is fun to experiment with them. Whoa, look at all this hatching.
I didn't even think of this for hatching either.
Dude's
This is
going in.
Tons of detail in it. It's like, and it's filling up that space in the same way that like his music fills up so much space.
Yeah.
I just think he's just an incredible artist from all angles.
This is brilliant. I mean, and we were talking about a restlessness and a need to create, right? And he does that, right? Because he's also a drummer and plays other instruments.
Yeah, I think he just plays drums.
Just drums?
But he plays in Lightning Bolt, but he also plays as Black Plus by himself.
Okay.
Where he hooks up his drums with all kinds of like pedals and shit. So like the drums are triggering other sounds.
I think I've seen that on the internet.
Black Plus rules. Shouts out to Brian Chippendale, the man.
Yeah, Brian, what's up? Let's hang out.
Yeah.
You can check out our other videos for our credibility.
We're also really nice.
Sick SpongeBob.
Oh yeah, so that was actually when we were looking at the Paper Red book, I wanted to mention that too, is that there's also a compulsion to kind of redraw cartoon characters and like Legos. Like that's a thing that I think is maybe there's some connective tissue there between like that, because kids want to draw their
Toys.
favorite characters
Yeah,
and toys all the
absolutely.
time. And so just that kind of like mimicry I think is maybe part of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I learned how to draw, was by just like
yeah.
copying other stuff.
Ninja Turtles, baby.
Ninja Turtles, He-Man.
He-Man.
He-Man. And his buddy Man-at-Arms.
Oh man, He-Man rules.
Yeah, that Laura Land's comic that I was talking about, when she was like, I'm a man, she draws herself as He-Man.
He-Man, that's great.
She's like, I want to piss on the world. It's great. We'll look at that on the I'd really like to do a whole episode on like comics that are kind of like throwaway one-offs that no one thought would get published,
Yeah.
Like really dig deep.
Look at this page.
This is so cool. I mean, this reminds me of those Jimbo vibes. It's also, though, like what you were saying, it's like the music is similar in that it's a lot of noise, a lot of static, a lot of energy. And it's challenging how do you draw nothingness? You don't want to leave your panels empty, but you want to depict empty space that's not empty.
Yeah.
So how do you draw nothingness? And it's like, what do you choose? Do you choose a pattern? Do you choose the absence of a pattern? Do you choose motion? Do you choose, what is your unique way of organizing visual information that depicts nothingness? And when I describe it to students, I go, look, you're organizing your mark making.
Yeah.
So which way are you going to do it? And if you do it this way, it looks like this. And if you do it that way, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and I think maybe someone like Aiden Koch is
Sergeant Snout.
does like there are ways you can use noise
Stick 'em.
and you can use the real estate of the panel and the page to fill it, or you can use it to empty it.
That's a good point.
And maybe those are the different approaches. Yeah, Chairman Munst.
Chairman Munst.
And I
Raba,
think,
Seka.
we could do an episode on emptiness, like minimalists.
Sounds great. Also, just like depicting nothingness, I think, is an interesting approach.
Although nothing is also
Manny.
something.
That's true.
Yeah, Manny is a character in
Power Punch. Greg is
Peak Force, I think. I think Greg and Manny are both in Peak Force.
It's cool to just lay down all the characters and then go, I'm going to do a story about Valis and AM PM.
AM is a fucking great name.
It's a great name.
And then like so many characters in here too.
Best comic ever, Berserk.
I wonder where in Berserk he was when he wrote that down.
You can't even see it. It's so
That
big.
book is massive.
Things like a tombstone.
Bury me under my copy of Ninja.
Absolutely. Well, this is a book that I really want to hang out with for a while.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't live in this
So
book
cool.
out, but come
No,
and-
no,
come
it's
and
like
come
a
and read it
reading
whenever you want.
library. Yeah, exactly. It's
Put
just
the,
like
put the gloves on.
It's like the Billy Ireland.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to the Billy Ireland, they'll pull any book for you, but you can't take it out. You got to read it there.
These are so cool too. What he does with these is he's a big screen printer, as I'm sure a lot of people know. And these prints that he makes, he screen prints body parts and pieces of flowers and stuff like that, and then he cuts the screen prints up and collages them together.
Cool.
So he screen prints these like sheets of assembly parts, like different arms and legs and heads, and then like collages them together into these weird landscapes.
This texture from the red in the background, it's evocative of that same texture we were trying to pin down in the smoke signal, where it was like
that like tinfoil-y?
the tinfoily look,
thing?
yeah. And I was saying I thought it was almost like a lithography crayon rubbing of asphalt.
Or you were saying that it might be the texture might be under the paper.
Yeah,
right?
It could be under the paper, yeah. And I think if you took a piece of paper outside, like some sketch paper, laid it on the ground on the concrete, and then did a rubbing, you would get something similar to this, which creates this like static, like you're saying, like this feeling. Let's go do it after this. Yeah. This is cool. This is very cool. I'm really excited we looked at these. And like, I'm really glad we revisited all this stuff because I didn't want to move past it. I wanted to get into it.
This to me is my like bread and butter. When I find stuff that has that mark making quality, it's not necessarily an aesthetic, but it's a feeling. When I find stuff like this, like that's the stuff that jumps out at me the most.
I love it.
And it is such a contrast to someone like Carl Stevens, I guess we were talking about in the cross-hatching episode, which I also like, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's there are certain kinds of drawing styles that look laborious to me, and I like them aesthetically, but there are other drawing styles that look joyful to me.
This is really cool. Who's this?
That's also Chippendale.
Oh, it's Chippendale.
With a screen-printed
Sick.
cover.
This is dope.
There's a couple of those floating around out there. I forget where I got that one.
Lightning Bolt.
And
also a great magic card, Lightning Bolt.
Yeah.
1 red, 3 damage. 3 points. Hell yeah, this is rad. I'm really glad we looked at this. I could read these all day. These are so sick.
Well, good. Go for it.
Yeah,
nothing but time.
Well, our time today, though, is almost up, I think.
True. All right. Well, what did we say? Johnny Ryan, get on the show.
Johnny Ryan, Brian Chippendale. You have a standing invite.
Carlos Gonzalez.
Ben Mara.
Gary Panter. Let's go.
Gary Panter,
on the show.
Our elder statesman.
I like that he's just on Instagram telling people to stop.
Stop contacting him. Please don't contact me. A note card comes up. Which I love the note card approach because it's the analog text. It's like I wrote this note card so that we don't actually have to interact, and I don't have to type anything down.
And you know who you are.
Exactly, you know who you are. Stop contacting me. I love it. He's already got his friends. He doesn't want you as his new friend. He's already got his friend group.
Yep.
He goes to their house. They have dinner.
I imagine you ever go to like a movie, like a director Q&A. And the bulk of the questions I find, depends on the director, I guess, are like, it's not really a question. It's somebody using this question format to slip in how much they know about the director.
Sure.
I imagine Gary Panter gets a lot of messages that are like, hey Gary, quick question. I'm a huge fan of this, and I've been reading this since I was 5, and I love Pee-wee and all this. And it's like, and then by the end, it's like, what's the question here?
Yeah.
Anyway, just wondering how you're doing.
Yeah. I think, every time I see someone raise their hand, I slump in my chair because I'm like, this can't be good. I will say the contrast has been at the past couple fests, like comic fests. Mm-hmm. Some of my favorite cartoonists will get up and they ask a really short and direct question. And they nail it. You know who's really good at that actually is Josh Bayer.
Yeah.
I saw him ask Daniel Clouds if he said, is Vertigo or is David Boring like in any way kind of loosely related to Vertigo? And I've never seen Klaus react more honestly, and like his shields immediately went down and he was like, oh my God, I love Vertigo. Like when people come to my house to stay, I take them to Scotty's apartment. Mm-hmm. He's like, I go all around town and I show him all the spots. And he was just like the biggest fan. And in like a moment, that one short question turned him from like someone who I imagine is very kind of like standoffish and like taciturn, cynical and kind of exactly. That all melted away, and in one sentence he was just like, I can't wait to tell you all this stuff about Vertigo. And I was like, Josh nailed it. I was like, props. That's amazing.
That rules. All right, well, let's go watch Vertigo.
Yeah, and let's draw some cool comics.
sure.
As always, we want to see your comics. You can email us at comicspeoplepod@gmail. Is that correct?
I think that's right. If it's not, we'll put it in.
We'll put it on the screen. And P.O. Box coming soon.
Maybe by the time this airs, we'll have a P.O. box.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Otherwise, you can hit us up on Instagram.
Or send it to any P.O. box anywhere and see what happens.
That's a good one. On Instagram, my name is Janice Joplin. No.